Hey guys, welcome to TGS. Today we've got Dr. Al Gabriel on. Dr. Al is an advocate for diversity in field sports as well as running for BASC Council. Definitely a very interesting man. We discussed some really awesome stuff off camera as well that perhaps we will touch again on together in the future. But for now, enjoy. Dr. Al, hello, how are you?
I'm all right, yourself?
Yeah, very good. Please introduce yourself to everybody.
All right, my name's Al Gabriel. I'm a molecular biologist. I work in childhood cancer, a particular disease called neuroblastoma. It's the one that killed Bradley Laurie. You must have heard it on the news. It's a rare cancer, but it's a lethal one. So that's my primary day job. So a lot of people think I'm a deer stalker, full-time keeper, but I'm a cancer scientist primarily, and I'm a recreational stalker.
That's pretty cool. So a bit Dr. House-esque.
Yes.
I have here that you have a PhD in genetics as well.
That's correct, yeah.
Or is that?
And no, I actually started up as an ecologist. So I used to study insects and insect biology. So I've always been into biology, and my primary interest in is what they call genomics and evolution. So it's just how life works and evolves and that sort of thing. So, but because of my genetics background and career-wise, I moved into the human sector. So I mostly work on human disease, if that makes sense. But we're all linked, you see, whether you're...
That is a big jump, but I guess it's not a big jump.
No, it's the underlying rules are the same. It's biology, and it can be applied in many ways. But you can see that, what you study in animals, plants has application in childhood cancer. That's the beauty of life.
On a personal note, you hunt, shoot, fish. What would you do in your spare time when you're not saving kids' lives?
That's pretty much what I do. So primarily, I'm a deer stalker. I do a bit of fishing in Norway once or twice a year, or if people invite me over Scotland. Other than that, I'm a deer manager. I manage roe deer in Northumberland on private estates, and that's the only species we have up here. So I wouldn't say I'm a deer stalker. I'm a roe stalker. That's the only thing I stalk. That's the only thing I know about. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is
that's pretty much. Yeah.
That's good. You get out quite often?
I do. See, I'm lucky enough to have a very large ground, and my nearest hunting ground is just 10 minutes away. So on average, I go out about 5 times a week because I can go out in the morning, do a bit of stalking, still go to work, come back, and I can still go in the evening. So, and I don't have kids, so I can do this all day. And I have a large ground to cover. So I'm pretty much, till in the summer, I'm out 5-6 times a week on average.
Living the dream, mate. That is living the dream.
Yeah, it is borderlining a full-time stalker, but it's only because the ground is very close to where I live, where I work. I can drive in and out, particularly in summer days, 18, 19-hour days. I can still manage a full job and still do it twice a day. The dogs enjoy it, so it's a good exercise. I don't go to the gym, so that's my gym.
Nice. How long have you been stalking for?
So in the UK, I mean, I used to be, I did my PhD and I was with Territorial Army. So the current kind of stalking, I've been doing it for about 6 years now, just 5-6 years.
Tell me about the TA.
Well, I started when I was at uni. So I joined the London Officers Corps, and then I moved on I used to do my PhD in Kent. So I joined 3rd Battalion, PWRR, which is an infantry battalion. I joined them as a soldier. Mostly we competed for nationally with course and that sort of thing. So I spend a lot of time at Purbright Ranges in Bisley and that sort of thing on skills at arms type of thing.
So you're a fair hand.
That was about.
Safe to assume. You're a fair hand with the rifle, it's safe to assume.
Yeah, I'm a rifleman. I'm a rifleman primarily. I feel at home with a rifle than a shotgun. I do both. I do driven game as well. But I'm a rifleman primarily.
So I've got a rather large list of questions for you, and the first one we kind of touched on. What is your interest in conservation? What sort of turns you on in that sector?
For me, it's a lifelong dream. So, like I said, I got into biology when I was 4. I used to collect insects, trying to rename them, restructure them, and that sort of thing. I had a very good biology teacher, and I'm Ethiopian by birth. I was born in East Africa. I was raised there, so I spent a lot of time out on the plains. So I had a very unusual childhood that way. So I pretty much spent my entire childhood outdoors. So that it just comes naturally in that sense. And I used to make, bows and arrows, slingshots. So I was really into being outside. That was my thing, to my grandmother's despair. She did not like me shooting things and hunting things, but that's what I did. So that's for me. It's I think it's a way of life. It's no different to religion, really. That's how I see it. I mean, that the conservation element is, people always forget, particularly with the modern type of shooting, that even BASC, the the C stands for conservation. It's the underlying factor of what we do. Shooting is conservation, hunting is conservation, and it's a way of promoting way of life and preserving what's for the next generation. Really,
can be conservation, I think, is the thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
there is certain breaches of that I think may need to be addressed, but we won't talk about that now. It's a bit too deep and political. What particular conservation things are at the forefront of your mind, of your preference of research?
So for me, I mean, I sit on the North East England branch of the British Deer Society. So my conservation is deer, and particularly the management of deer is my immediate interest and thing I take part in actively. So at the moment, as you know, we have too many deer in the country, over 2 million, and the numbers are rising in terms of road traffic collisions, just land disputes in terms of land management and land use, and that's pretty much what I take interest in.
Do you have a magic silver bullet for curing the amount of deer in the UK? In terms of
well, there is no magic bullet, but it's a multi-pronged approach. I mean, we need to communicate more. We need to make our plans more effective, just like deer management groups do in Scotland. I think we just need to be a bit more organized. Some areas are overmanaged, some of them are undermanaged. So just finding the balance. I recently had an opportunity to go on fallow stalking down south, and some of the things I've heard in terms of some areas are well managed, and if you just happen to have a neighbor that isn't managing them there, then you create an inland habitat where your work is of no use because they just know where to go, that sort of thing. We don't have that with roe deer, of course, but it was an eye-opener in terms of how we need to communicate and we need to talk to each other to really manage them at a global level, if that makes sense.
It's a very big deal with fallow deer down here, certainly, more than anything.
Yeah.
As you say, you can do everything you can, but unless you work as a team, as a group, there should be like a government mandate for landowners to control deer.
I think there needs to be some level of management, as in an organized, orchestrated management. So at the moment, different people are doing their own thing, and that's not really helping because the numbers are going up and continually on an upward trajectory, and this can't be sustained without severe damage to the environment. People must realize that. And secondly, people are fond of deer usually. Shooting them is not a very popular approach. There are other methods that people have suggested, including a genetic one, but I think ultimately we do need to shoot a whole lot more of deer if we're going to get on top of this, particularly with the lockdown now where recreational stalkers are stuck at home.
Is that like a daughterless deer genetic change or something?
Absolutely. There are ways, but it's not effective. There's no means of doing that. I think we need to shoot a lot of deer, and it's part of management. People have to accept we are producing food, we are protecting human life from disease, road accidents, and so forth. It is generational food and management at the same time.
I think we should release wolves. I don't actually. Next up, you have a lot of very powerful statements in your BASC letter that I would implore everyone to read because it's inspiring more than anything.
Oh, thank you.
How to better inform the council. You said the council wasn't well informed enough of the public's opinion. I would be tempted to agree with you quite heartfeltly. How does BASC Council become better informed?
Well, I mean, at the moment, in my view, and I have a lot of good friends at BASC, I hope they're not going to take this to heart, but if you speak to the average shooter, just the person you run into on a pigeon day, pheasant day, a deer stalking day, any game face you go to, there is a big miscommunication between the association and its members. There is this recent feeling that they're not being told enough, they're not involved enough, and that the council doesn't seem to understand what they want or what they would like to see BASC achieve. So council is informed. I mean, the reality is, BASC involves, I know them because I speak to a lot of them. A lot of resources are put into place to monitoring misinformation and so forth. They do their job. It's just the couple of snags that we've had in terms of the recently cartridge gate, as I like to call it, and with the general licenses. Not as BASC's fault. I mean, it's not a fault of BASC at all. But we just felt like we were slightly ambushed or slightly not well prepared, or we should have seen this coming kind of feeling. To some level, not unwarranted, because they are sort of aware of it. It's just there just seems to be, to me personally, from the outside, and I have no link to BASC but from knowing a few of them, there seems to be something missing in between, as in they need to know what the membership want. Everyone I speak to says, "Oh, BASC, they're not what they used to be. I'm not happy about this. I'm not happy about that." I'm not hearing a lot of positives from the members. So that tells me something needs to be communicated to. Go on.
Said rarely anything positive at all, in fact.
Exactly, and that has to be communicated to the council and the executive, and they need to, at the very least, acknowledge that. So even if the membership is not getting the right information, which is actually the case, because BATs actually do a lot of work that just doesn't get communicated back to the members. So there is disconnect. So what I mean by better inform the council is that people have to realize the council is composed of individuals who have full-time jobs, just like anybody else. They're not paid members, they are volunteers, essentially. That's what a council is. But they are, because they come from different parts of the country, they work in different areas. You can't expect them to be fully aware of what's happening on a daily basis. That's the job of the executive, not the council. But the council obviously drives where the executive goes in 3 to 5 years' time, that sort of thing. It's the long-term planning core of the association. So what I mean by that is, if you read the little statement that I put in, I would like to create a new unit. It doesn't have to be
a good name as well, didn't you?
Branch. Say again.
Special branch.
Yeah, the special anti-service, as I would like to call it. They're never going to call it that, but that would be a good name. The BSAS. We just need a new organized. This could be existing member of staff, existing resources. It's the stuff they already do. There's nothing new about that. We just need to collect them into a special unit where they get special resources and new ways of doing things, just so that the membership is reassured we have a team on this in real time, and these are not volunteers, these will be employed staff or restructured from the existing employment. There's a lot they do, it just doesn't seem from the outset that it is organized enough to satisfy the membership. The membership just needs to know we have a unit that monitors misinformation, challenges for moral justice and so forth. It just feels the department are there, the right people are there with the right skill set. It just doesn't feel, to me personally, it should be the spearhead of the association at the moment. We need that to be the primary thing. That's what concerns a lot of membership. Are we going to save shooting for the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? And that, to me, is critical. So, BASC does a lot of amazing stuff with young guns, the businesses, Westminster and that sort of thing. They achieve a huge amount of work, which doesn't get translated back. They do publish on the magazines and so forth. A lot goes out. It just doesn't seem to be enough, or it's not communicated at the right level, at the right time for the membership to feel satisfied and be in support of BASC, which is what we want ultimately. We want the membership to be in support of the council and the executive. There's no point the executive and the council doing great. Exactly. If they do a great job, but they don't inform the membership, or the membership doesn't feel they're doing a great job, then a lot of effort is being wasted. So my view is that let them continue the work they do. Let's just restructure it a bit so that we actually have a unit with a name whose entire job would be monitoring misinformation, monitoring moral justice, and updating these council members who are full-time employees elsewhere, and the executive. We're just restructuring it for intelligence, if that makes sense. It's just intelligence gathering and preparation in advance so that real information has been decided, which it already is. It just doesn't have a name, and it just doesn't feel like a body, if that makes sense.
So that leads me on to two other of my questions. The first is, you mentioned the old proactive versus reactive, which is something that most people will complain about BASC for. Yeah. The fact that they seem to just be saying, oh, they've done that, let's put that fire out. Someone else has done that, let's put that fire out. That actually leading the way. And that kind of links to my second question, because it's probably easier for you to answer it in one, is how do we combat the misinformation that starts all of these other issues in the first place? So what does BASC do to combat misinformation? And then how does it be proactive in its combating of misinformation? Yes, there you go.
So, I mean, the biggest, a lot of, nonsense information is put out online. It's very easy to come up with misleading information as long as it suits, anybody else's, objective, which is fine. So the misinformation is, how do we monitor social media? How do we monitor the papers? How do we monitor all these forums and so forth? And I don't know the exact job title, but I'm sure there is a person at BASC whose job would be to monitor such things and update the executive and the council at some point. It's a matter of time. It's how quickly do we recognize it? Secondly, how do we identify it? How do we respond to it? So some of the responses that you get from BASC at times feels very conveyor belt type response. You know, this statements after something has happened. It always seems reactive, and that's what people feel. Now, primarily it's because most things are outside of BASC. You know, these are national governmental type of things. You know, BASC cannot be held accountable for every single thing that gets put out there. It's not. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, how do we respond to it in a way that not just to highlight where the issue is. I mean, so once you get an incorrect print on obviously BASC always says, you know, regarding that published article on the Telegraph, so and so, they'll put their statements out, which is fine. That's how that's how it should happen anyway. But my point would be, we need to have a global view in terms of how often are this type of misinformation coming out, who's pumping it out, how are they pumping it out, and how to best deal with that, not just article by article, but rather identifying the actual source. Who are these people? I know we call them antis. There are a few figureheads that we know of, but I mean, do we know how organized this is? So it's a matter of the barrage of misinformation is to be identified from the source, not be dealt with one article at a time, if that makes sense.
I would agree. Hence, the SAS will sort it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next statement I would like to, if you would expand on for me, is you would like to form closer ties with other conservation groups.
Yeah.
What ones? And
well, so basically, I had a conversation recently on Instagram from, I forgot his name, but he lives in Denmark apparently. But we have too many associations. I don't know if you noticed, but for a small island, for a tiny island, we do have a lot of conservation groups. You know, numerous, you know, a couple of dozen, you know, a dozen popular ones. So my view would be, firstly, we need to work together in the short term, because, for instance, when the lead shots, you know, news broke through, obviously was supposed to be a consortia decision of these associations together, which you know, it felt that way at the beginning, and then the whole cartridge thing exploded, and maybe not. My view would be, at the moment, if you look at, I don't know, the Moorland Association or Countries Alliance, NGOs, you know, they all do amazing work. You know, there's nothing to be said about that. But my view would be, which struck me recently, is that do we really need the number of associations that we have? Wouldn't it be better in the short term to work together, but actually ultimately, shouldn't we be unified? I mean, it should be a unification process where we should all be under a single umbrella. So my view would be, nothing has to change from what they do. You know, the Moorland Association can still be the Moorland Association. The BDS can still be the BDS. But do they all need independent CEOs, secretaries, executives? They're all doing the same thing multiple times. It is wasting time and resources. They are looking for membership. Somebody abandons BASC, goes to NGO. Leaves NGO, goes to countries. You know, we're not really, the denominator is not changing. There's X amount of, you know, shooters, conservationists outside. Wouldn't it be better if we reorganized and restructured ourselves, not in the short term, but let's start working better first, but with the aim of actually collaborating to a single, maybe have to be rebranded, I don't know. But I would feel better if actually all members of NGO, Country Alliance, they all went to a single association that manages us all. Then we only need one chief executive, one secretary, and one managing unit. And I think, given how small we are wasting a lot of money by, you know, joining this small association, which do excellent work. It's just we need numbers, and a place like Denmark has about, hunting has about a 95% approval rate. You know, we don't have anything like that here in the UK. So I think my view would be, we need to work together simply because we need to sing from the same song sheet and address the same issues in a concerted fashion, so we're not wasting our limited resources. And secondly, we should really be aiming towards unification. Unification, that we should be under a single umbrella that would protect us better. And in fact, I was reading the BASC Constitution recently. One of the roles and objectives of BASC actually is unification. There's the word unification, and that You should go and read it. It makes a fascinating read, actually. But one of the jobs of BASC is actually the constitution actually is to unify those who are involved in conservation and sportsmanship. So it's actually within our, within BASC, it's one of the duties actually is to unify and absorb anybody who's really working towards conservation and shooting. That's my view, at least. I'm too passionate about it, but that would be my standing point. Let's start working short term, but with a long-term view of actually becoming a single umbrella. Yeah.
I could lend my support to that based only on the almost complete changing of the BASC executive and still maintaining devolved powers to those who join BASC. Having communicated and worked with other organisations up to and including BASC, smaller organisations are a pleasure to work with by comparison. Speaking to a smaller organisation, it goes up and down the ladder and tree are significantly quicker than going up the ladder and down again than with BASC, because you have so many floors and so many people and so many powers of veto that I feel like the big ship doesn't work because they don't devolve enough powers into their regional offices. And I think that would be much the same. This isn't about me, so I'm going to stop talking. A membership that resembles modern Britain.
Yeah.
What does modern Britain look like? And what does that membership in your head look like? There you
go. Not the current BASC Council, definitely not. It does not look like that. I can assure you that. I mean, I've said this piece on Shooting Times and in the BASC magazine a while back. My viewpoint is that, shooting has an image problem, and people need to recognize that. It has a significant image problem. And the second bit is that people do not understand shooting because it's no longer part of their lives. The majority of the UK population lives in cities, devoid of wildlife and nature, and friends who do any outdoorsy stuff. So unless you're one of the lucky few who's managed to go out to the grass more, or out on the plains, then how would your feelings towards it is biased because you'd just be an urban type of person. Your views would be just these posh people out there in tweeds, blasting things away. It just, interpretation is important, image is important. And at the moment, you look at the UK population. I was lucky enough. I organised a meeting at BASC about 2 years ago. I went down there because I wasn't happy by the fact that there weren't enough ethnic minorities in shooting and field sports, and more importantly, not enough of them were being represented in publications, magazines, outputs, just any social media. We're almost completely a forgotten group. We do shoot, we do hunt, we do fish. Not a lot of numbers, but there are. You just have to scut through social media to know there are enough of us out there to get some representation. But that wasn't the case. So they were very kind enough to host me and have a chat with me in terms of the things they can change and so forth. So I've given them some of my points and they've taken it on board. So I kudos on that one.
Have you seen any change from that meeting?
Yeah, I've seen smaller changes. So one of the things that I've been trying to get up and going is to monitor our membership. At the moment, nobody actually knows the level of ethnic minorities as BASC members. That number does not exist. So one of the things I've suggested is to, when people join or renew, to have a self-certification form where you can say, would you like to tell us if you're a male, female, ethnic minority, so forth, just so we know the proportion of who's disabled, just so we know who makes up BASC membership, you see what I mean? I think it's a fundamental data point that we should know who our membership is, because at the moment, nobody knows. I don't expect the number to be great, but I'm a member of BASC, so I assume somebody down south is a member of BASC, or somewhere in the Midlands, So it's just a matter of knowing where we are, because without knowing how many ethnic minorities are part of BASC or any field sports, then we really cannot tackle the problem. We can't have a mission to resolve it.
Or
so my point of view,
or women or kids or anybody really,
we just can't put a graph to say. So that's something that's been worked on, as far as I know. Last email I sent, that was being decided upon, so that'll be coming soon, I hope. But they have taken it on board, so I'm quite pleased with that. But these things take time, I accept that. So modern Britain is now composed of your native Brit, Africans, Asians, Caribbeans, and everything in between. But we make about 15% of the country is now, ethnic minorities. And numbers are growing up. We have migration and so forth. So 15% is a decent portion of population. So by the same caveat, you would expect, I don't know, 5 to 10% of the council to resemble part of what the country looks like. You look at the council, it's primarily male-dominated as the sport is. There's been significant improvement recently. We have a few ladies in it, young ladies as well. But as far as I know, there are no minorities that are within the council or the executive, as far as I know. But like I say, we just need to. It's not about tokenism. It's just a matter of recognizing what modern Britain looks like and who our shooters are, who our conservationists are, and we just need to better represent them. It's a simple example as I can't remember the last time I picked up a hunting shooting magazine and saw anything minority as I don't know, a face off, I don't know, Seiko, face off, take a pick, anything, any shotgun, you know. It just considered something that you would never get away with it. If this was music industry, football, what have you, or any other industry, the police had to deal with this at some point, you know, they had to redress this institutional racism, as it were. Shooting does not have that. Let me be clear. Shooting does not have that. Everyone I've met have been kind, nice, and very friendly, and I've had no single experience as a result of my color. None. I can say that on record. So what I'm trying to say is we just need to move forward with the publications and the adverts and all the stuff that goes out, that in some cases you do find ethnic minorities that take part in competitions and so forth. So let's just balance what we see and not just cater to a particular type of image, which is at the moment, the shooting image is quite different to what the country looks like. Obviously, I focus on it because of what I am and who I am. But there is a slight change in the country, a slight change of shooters and people. You go to Clare Range on a Saturday. You know, it wasn't the case 13 years ago. I don't remember seeing, but now I see once in a while. I see an ethnic minority on a shotgun range. You know, it happens once in a while. So there is movement, and it just needs to be recognised and to be catered for, just like, you know, any other business, really, any other institution.
Moving on from the subject, it's fascinating, by the way. Actually, before we move on from that, how would you look to appeal to more ethnic minorities and ladies? How does one go about promoting that as a BASC council member? How would you go about promoting that?
It's a tough one to crack. So I've been trying it. Ladies, I find a lot easier because I live up in Newcastle. You know, there isn't a large ethnic minority. Like I always tell people, I don't go on knocking on doors trying to get them recruited. You know. So it depends where you are. I think the southern part of the country has, you know, more ethnic minorities than up here. The first thing to say would be, like I've suggested to them, you do need ambassadors. You do need ambassadors to be the face of that objective. You know, if you're trying to encourage women, you need women as ambassadors who can go and show the sport off and recruit and educate. Same applies for ethnic minorities. You need ambassadors. You know, when you want to promote, you know, game, you know, you get a chef, you know, you have a chef ambassador who's going to make amazing meals and show us how versatile it is. It's the same principle as any minorities, really. You need ambassadors, and that's why the image needs to change. You know, having a minority on the council shows progress, shows that we are making an active effort to be inclusive. You know, having people on publication, social media, you know, that helps. That other people will see it and say, oh, hang on, if he can do it, I can. If she can do it, I can. And that's the sort of approach that we need. We need ambassadors. We need people that are relatable, that can go out there and recruit on our behalf. And that's what I've been doing, essentially.
Let's talk about you for a bit more, actually, before we move on to anything else. What are your top 3 hunting experiences? There you go. That's always a good one.
Oof. Good point. The best one would be Arran. So I had a raid slag out of Arran last year on a BASC scheme, as it happens. Beautiful. It was an amazing. It was been tracking for about 5 days. It's a 5-day trip, and I managed to take it down on day 5, about 3 hours before end of hunt, which is quite. And I've got on video with the roaring and everything. It was amazing. It was just there was a rainbow out that morning. You know, the sun was shining. It was just beautiful, a beautiful scenery. And I shot it with a 270, with the round I reloaded, especially for the occasion. So I'm quite pleased with that. So that's the take-home message. That's the best one for me. And the other 2, I recently had Chinese water deer and a muntjac down in Sussex. That was a really good morning. 2 species same day. And last one would be my first roebuck.
Decent buck, was it, or just a memorable occasion?
And that was a decent head, but it was a memorable occasion because it was just unexpected. Yeah.
Yes. And what rifles do you shoot? Don't be asking.
I'm very traditional in the way that I rarely change shotguns or rifles. So I get what I like first. I do my research and I get it. I never change. So I shoot a 270 Seiko A7. That's the only thing I shoot on everything. I pretty much can empty my entire box, and I would not need anything else. I'm a massive, massive Seiko fan.
And my next question is this: is you state that the protection of our sport depends on each of us. Can you expand on that, please?
Something I came across recently is, uh, whenever you run into one of those bird days, people do expect a lot from BASC at times, sometimes unwarranted level of expectation, because people, they have to understand that there's only 155k members and about 200 members of staff, give or take. It is a small association by grand scheme of things. It's not a big one, so there's a limitation on how much you can achieve. I've lost my train of thought now. It's been too creative there.
I was going to say, but it does lead me on to a question before we come back to this one. That is, do you think BASC could do more?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
A large surplus of cash every year that they just put in the bank, which I don't really understand.
No, they do a lot more. I engage more primarily with BASC North. And we have a very good relationship here in terms of, supporting young guns and that sort of thing, charities. I'm far more engaged with the BASC North other than the HQ. But they can do a lot more, and they do a significant amount more. And I must come back to this, but not a lot of it gets translated back into the membership. I mean, a lot happens on the ground. I mean, the regional officers, they do a whole lot more. I mean, you wouldn't believe the amount of charities, conservation work, bird boxes. It's full on.
I'm fully aware how bad their communication is. I think that the point.
But the membership should be satisfied that on the ground, the regional officers and so they do slave away a lot, and they do sacrifice a lot of the private time to get these young guns up and running, these charity balls. It takes a lot of. I know this for a fact. It takes a lot of organization, and they do a lot. So as an organization, we do a lot. Not communicate enough or at the right level. There is this disconnect or rift, whatever you want to call it, between the HQ, big boys kind of decision-making process there, and how that gets translated back. And I think that's one of the things I really want to work on or highlight, is that we really do need to update our membership at the right time, at the right level, not just on need-to-know basis, which sometimes it feels like, which shouldn't be the case, I don't think. And we should be able to do that.
So back to the original question of protection of our sport depends on each of us.
That's the one. So it recently occurred to me that people do expect a lot from BASC, but when you ask somebody, and I, even as a person that is currently running for BASC election, I will tell you this frankly. When was the last time you took somebody out? Somebody that's never held a rifle or a shotgun before. When was the last time you gave a young person or a young lady an opportunity to go out in a more comfortable setting to, have a go at deer stalking, And most of the time people say, like, well, I don't know, I haven't done it for years. Well, that's not good enough. You as a member of BASC or as a shooter, anybody who goes out there to do any sort of ferreting, anything at all, you are an ambassador, you are the face of shooting or conservation. And if you yourself as a person have not at least recruited one person into BASC, or you have not taken one person out shooting or pigeon shooting, then, you're not really being a very good conservationist. And I think our strengths comes from recruitment and education. And I think people who are a member of BASC or not, they should really take this on board. The future depends on how many people we introduce, how many people we retain. I personally take, over 20 or 30 ladies a year out deer stalking for free. I have no interest in commercial shooting. I literally take them out for free so they get a chance at having a go. And anybody who wants to come and learn anything about deer, I am more than happy to spend the time to take them out, help them out with the applications, explain to them how applications works, and so forth. Simple things like calibers, shot placement. I get calls, emails. I actively spend X amount of time a week trying to engage with those comments and questions, because every person you recruit, I've had numerous people who've got their licenses as a result of me introducing them out to the field or helping them with the application, explain to them how it works. So I feel I've done okay for in terms of recruitment and retention. If everybody did the same, then the number will amplify. Like you said, on your last podcast, if we all recruited one person a year, our membership is 310,000, easy. But if people can't really take the responsibility of not even introducing one person a year, then it's really not fair to blame an organization for all the flaws that are out there. This is a big question it's a big problem. Shooting is a complicated effect. So we need to be responsible until you can satisfy yourself that you are recruiting enough, you're introducing enough people into shooting and taking game. I take God knows how many kilos of venison to work to give it to people who've never tasted venison before, just so they can say, oh, it's actually not that bad, or have a positive experience of what deer stalking involves. It's not just about pulling your trigger, it's actually bringing tasty meat. So I get requests, can I have can I get can I get this, can I get that, or do you mind getting me a haunch? I get a lot of requests, and I actually call it the meat run. I have a list of what people want, and whenever it becomes available, I provide them. And that's the kind of thing. Until you can actually prove that you've done that, then you yourself as a member are not really doing 100%. So how can you expect an organization to do the same?
I do feel like people are very good at being told what to do. And I think BASC could do a better job of driving that. And I think what you just said is absolute perfection. But I do feel like BASC could not make it easier, but encourage people to do it. Tell people to do it.
Absolutely. A challenge, a new BASC challenge, and introduce one person. Let's double our numbers, It's not easy.
There would be, wouldn't that be something if BASC...
You can start it. The double challenge, you can start it. Get double the membership.
That, I suppose, is more or less all of my questions answered, apart from why BASC Council?
It's a tough one because people have to recognize it's not a paid job, it's a voluntary job. You do have about 10, 11 meetings a year, which you have to attend in person. So there's actually a lot of sacrifice for a person to undertake such a task. So people do have to recognize that it is a big responsibility. But primarily, though, it is the steering committee of BASC, so to speak, is where the policies are set for the next 3, 5, 10 years. So you can really implement change for the future. So you do your everyday work that you do with introducing people and be an ambassador for shooting. But then this is an opportunity to actually do a bit more. So my views are, firstly, for me, communication is key. We need to communicate with the membership. We need to get the love back as a work. There's a lot of, bad blood at the moment for whatever reason. So I would like to change how people see BASC. I think it needs to be a very positive outlook. We need to change. At the moment, there is an element that it's a very macho sport. Not enough women. The number of women is going up and up, but it's not enough still. Minorities are lost, kind of a forgotten kind of group. We need to bring that. It comes in different caveats, of course. It's not just ethnic minorities. There are different kinds of minorities, disabled people as well, which need extra, help to bring them into the fore. So we actively, for me, is to work on these forgotten groups to get them on board. To promote communication, and more importantly, the number of the membership matters. And my view would be to work closely for the short term, but with a long-term view that we should all be under a single umbrella. That for me would be an absolute win if it's ever achieved. But it is definitely one we need to aim for. We need to be a single institution. We're all doing the same thing. We don't have to change what we do. It's just a matter of cat badging, if that's the term. We just need to be managed and be more efficient in what we do. We do not need 16 executives and so forth. We can do a much better job of defending shooting and field sports and conservation if we were streamlined. And I think there are European models that clearly prove that.
Providing that it wasn't working like BASC does at the moment, but it worked.
We have to change. A lot has to change, but this is long term. It's not going to happen anytime soon. But I see no reason why anybody would say, I do not want to be part of a bigger institution like the NRA, where there's more of us, we can lobby better, our money would go further. I still haven't heard a single argument as to why. I'm not saying join BASC and become a bigger BASC. I am saying become a single umbrella, which is yet to be named in the future. But I see no reason why wildfowlers can still continue to do the wildfowling. The BDS can stay BDS. Everybody can stay in their remit and do what they do beautifully. It's just a matter of structuring them and putting a cat badge and a new name so we can all be a bigger institution for the better. And I think there is a lot of personal conflict because some of the institutions are very old, some of the managing staff, egos, bad blood. There's a lot out there which is preventing such things taking place. But for me, as a young person, as a newcomer, I really do not care about that. I mean, people's egos and previous conflicts mean nothing to me whatsoever. What's important to me is that anybody who's managing these associations should be, at the very least, be positive, that we should be bigger and more organized. And I see no reason why nobody wouldn't feel that. I think that's the key information, I think.
Finally, shooting and social media. What are your thoughts on the two going hand in hand? It's quite a contentious issue. Most older generations will say that the two things should be well hidden.
Yeah.
Younger people may be quite the opposite, but it's not guaranteed. What are your thoughts?
We definitely should not be hidden. I think people who dislike hunting, shooting, will be very difficult to change their minds. You know, they'll always have some bias towards it. But the worst thing we can do is to shy away from what we do and why we do it. I think that would be the nail on the coffin. I think nobody should shy away from stalking, game shooting, you know, that sort of thing. We definitely should not back down. We should be responsible. There are images circulating online that you have to look at them and ask, how's this going to be seen from the outside world? I mean, is this really helping? So every time you press post, you know, just make sure helping shooting, promoting shooting or not. And that's the important thing. I think social media could be huge in bringing in this, you know, minorities, ladies, and just people who may not know about shooting to learn more about game shooting and deer stalking. It's a massive, massive medium, and it's for the future. It's coming. It's already here, and people just accept that. There's no going back. I mean, it's a lost cause. You know, trying to defend it is a lost cause. But what we should do, however, is educate people on how to present pictures that are supported. Every time you press play, just make sure it is helping. At the moment, the biggest challenge, in my view, and I've spoken to a few others, the biggest problem is the so-called social media influencer. That's the biggest danger in my book, and that is one we have to be careful of.
Okay, can you expand on that a little?
So my view would be, if you are a person who are professional in the trade, in the field, you're a full-time stalker, keeper, gamekeeper, whatever. If you are what you do, or you are well-versed, experienced, or you are aware of what you do to promote whatever you promote, then by all means, go ahead, by all means. But if there is an individual who has 100% just commercial interest, but at the same time pretending to be shooting or putting shooting in a bad light, or things that may not be real, or, you know, kind of, the question for me would be, everybody who's out on social media is not really representing our sport 100% to the letter, as in to what we are and what we do. So we just have to be careful who we're promoting as our ambassadors. Anybody out there with a shooting outdoor account and so forth really is an ambassador for shooting. So if we see something that is really not a representative of shooting or the kind of work that we do the British way, we should really, you know, put our hands up and say, hey, that's not right. You know, we shouldn't be promoting everybody and anybody with that there who may be pumping out the wrong information, you know, shooting a bird at the wrong season, that sort of thing. We just need to be careful who is our ambassador online. So I'm not saying let's regulate it or curtail it in any way. Promote as much as you can, as long as it's the right thing, it's something you enjoy and it is correct. But supporting individuals that are pumping out wrong information, incorrect information, often illegal in some cases, that cannot be a good thing for us long term. So I think the danger of social media is putting out things that would, you know, trigger change in regulation, which will affect us long term. So we have to be careful about what's put out there. So we just have to educate people, put the right information out, put the right picture out with the right sentiment and why we do it. So always have a reason why you killed something or what you manage the way you do. Educate people. It's for pest control. It's for dismanagement and so forth. We just have to be more conservation minded and not too commercially minded that we forget what we do, because that would affect regulation down the road. You know, whenever you see, it's the same thing as I'll give you a simple example, not related, but, you know, public shooting in Canada, all of a sudden AR-15s, automatic rifles, no longer allowed. What I'm trying to say, I don't have any opinion on the matter, but what I'm trying to demonstrate is a single event can trigger regulation, and we just have to be careful of who's out there, you know, putting out shooting information, outdoors information, who is really, you know, should they be supported? As in, you know, just because somebody has, I don't know, 100,000 followers does not make them better conservationists, better hunters, better speakers of conservation. You know, we just have to be careful, nurture those who are real and are actually in it for the right reasons. That is conservation and passing on to the next generation. Does that make sense? I'm too passionate about this, but that's my viewpoint.
It's a tough subject, isn't it? I think one needs to be aware that that 100,000 follower person will work back through your points. That 100,000 follower